Okay, we're going to be using MySQL to talk about some SQL scripting. So let's start by downloading and installing MySQL. So I went to mysql.com and I'm going to click on the developer zone because I'm not using, if you go to the downloads, you can download the enterprise edition and the cluster. And we're just going to use this for some practice and some learning. So I don't need a download or the enterprise edition. What I want to do is I want to go to the developer zone and then I'm going to just kind of cheat a little bit. So we have MySQL downloads, and I'm going to go to MySQL installer for Windows. Now notice there's lots of other things I can install here or I can download here, but I'm going to go to the MySQL installer for Windows because, well, I'm on Windows. And so we have the community installer here. We have two different ones, the 5.5 meg download and the 431 meg download. I would use this if I was doing an offline installation, but I'm not. So I'm going to click download and no thanks, don't want to sign in, just start my download. And so here's my MSI download. So I'm going to click on that. And once I agree to a couple of things, all right, so here's a notification that I'm getting. An installer upgrade is available. It's mandatory. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. That's going to download my new MSI installer. And let me move this over to the screen. I can go ahead and close this here. I'm done with that. Okay, so now I can go through my MSI installer and make this full screen if I could, but unfortunately I can't at the moment. So I can choose what to install. I can do the developer default, the server only, the client only. The server only installs only the SQL Server product. The client only installs only the client products without the server. Full does everything. I'm going to do a custom because I want to walk you through this. It's kind of it's a little weird, but it's a cool installer. So here's my SQL servers, applications, connectors, and documentation. So I'm going to start. These are my available products. These are products to be installed. So I'm going to expand my SQL server, and you'll see here we've got 8, 5.7, 5.6. I'm going to expand 8, and I'm going to find the latest version, 8.03.1 x64. I'm going to click that to move it over, and now that that's installed, I can't install, or that I'm set it to be installed, I can't install any of the others. That gives me my server platform. Now my applications, I want to include the MySQL workbench so that I can work with that a little bit as well. Now I could do MySQL for Visual Studio, MySQL Shell, MySQL Router. I don't need any of those for what we're going to be doing, so we'll just stick with the server and the workbench for the moment. The connectors here, these connectors will allow me to use other tools to interact with SQL Server. So with this particular server instance, so ODBC, C++, JNet, and .NET, and Python are my available connectors. I don't need any of those at the moment, but under documentation, there are a couple of things that I want. I do want the MySQL documentation just in case we need to have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then the other thing under samples and examples is I want to include the samples and examples. So that's going to give me a couple of databases that I can practice and play around with. So now that I have those selected, I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And then where we're going to install to, it says the selected path already exists. That's because I installed it on here before and uninstalled it for the purposes of this demonstration. So we're going to say Next. You still have warnings. Are you sure you want to continue? You probably won't have that. My warning is just here. The path already exists. So I'm going to say, yep, we're good. And these are all ready to download. So I'm going to click Execute, and it's going to start downloading those applications. And you'll see them populating here as we go. All right, all of them are downloaded. So I'm going to click Next. They're all ready to install. Now, if you're doing other components, you might get notifications that there are prereqs that you have to deal with as well, and in which case you deal with those prereqs before you hit the execute. So I'm going to go ahead and execute and start the install process. We're doing SQL Server first, then the workbench, and you'll see this is actually going pretty quick. The installation, fortunately, works pretty snappily. And just as I say that, we pause here at 99%. There we go. Okay, click Next. Now, SQL Server and the examples are ready to configure. We got to do some post-install configuration, so I'm going to click Next. So I get to set the configuration type, development computer, server computer, dedicated computer, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go ahead and leave that because I don't want to change that config at the moment. So my connectivity, I can connect through TCP, named pipes, or shared memory. And it's set defaulted to TCP port 3306. And it's set to open the Windows firewall ports for network access. So we're good with that. We could do advanced logging if we wanted to. We might try to do that if you're having issues and you need to do some more logging and troubleshooting with it. So strong password encryption or legacy password, we're going to do strong password, and I'm going to set a root password. I'm going to use a very generic root password. And check it, and it looks good, so I'm going to click Next. Configure MySQL as a Windows service. Choose a service name. Set whether we want to start the SQL server at startup. Do we want to run a standard system account or a custom user? We're going to leave it as standard. We're going to leave all of these as default at the moment. You might need to play with that a little bit if you were doing multiple instances. So I'm going to click Next and then Execute. And so it starts setting up all of our options and finish. So now we're back to samples and examples need to be configured. So we're going to click Next. We're going to put them on our existing SQL server, the one we have right here. I need to give it the password that I just set so it can access that and do or install the databases. So connection succeeded. That's good. We'll click Next and Execute. And that will run the scripts that will populate our sample databases. Okay, and configuration is complete. Hit Next, and we are done. We are ready to start SQL Workbench. I'm going to go ahead and click Finish, and we'll have it start the SQL Workbench. And I'm just going to show you one thing real quick. We're going to spend some time in SQL Workbenches a little bit later on, but I just wanted to show you this real quick. Here are the MySQL connections. Notice you can add additional connections. So the idea is you can install this on your workstation and manage servers remotely. But since I've just installed it locally here for testing purposes, I can click on this connection. It's going to ask me for my password. Hit OK. And here we go. And I said I had some stuff preloaded on a previous version, so it saved all of that for me. But here we are inside the MySQL Workbench with all of our databases. And we're going to add more databases. We'll create some. We'll use some, in class we'll use some scripts to populate some databases. But that is, real quick, how we install SQL Server.